because I love it when Alicia said Q1, Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. This is that screen. Now, Q0 is not all the time used. Very, very rarely do you see Q0, but when people do use it, they're talking about the minimum value. Sometimes people call it the 0th percentile, the data point below which there is no other data. Hopefully that makes sense. 0th percentile. As we determined, remember we determined a percentile was? I don't know why I'm doing this. Italian. What was a percentile? Why is it called a percentile?
No,
you're done that. I'm sorry, I should let you go. I should let you go.
You are above, or like.
It's the percent that you're above. Thank you, thank you. You guys all had it. It's the percent of the data that data point exceeds. So since the minimum value is 5, that's got to be the 0th percentile because it doesn't exceed anybody. It's the smallest one. There's nothing under it. Fair? Good. Now sometimes that's called Q0. It's always called the minimum value. You can call it whatever you want. I can understand either one. Alicia?
So with Q, when you were asking earlier, Q1 to Q3, wouldn't that be 50%?
Yes! Exactly! That's what I was talking about. We're going to get more visual of that today too. So, before we get right to that though, Alicia, the Q1 or the 25th percentile, in our data, that's 10. So what does that mean? What percent of the class has been to fewer than 10 states? 25% of the class has been to fewer than 10 states. It's a line in the sand. It says, here's a line, 10 states, a quarter of the class have been to 9 or fewer. That's all it tells you. It's a line in the sand. What's Q2? That's the median. Otherwise known as 50th percentile, but we usually call it the median. That's the word we usually use, right? And what is the median? Middle. It's the middle, the actual. We like using the word middle for this one, right? It actually is the middle of the data. If you put the data in order.
It's the middle of the road.
It's actually the middle of the road. It's the number, 13 in this case. Half of the class has been to fewer than 13, and half has been to more than 13. But 13 is that dividing line between the bottom and upper half of the data. Q1 is a dividing line between the bottom 25 and the top 75. What you're doing is you're taking all the data and you're basically throwing a line in there and chopping it into pieces, percent pieces. Fair enough? Good, we're getting close to your point, Alicia. Thank you, sister. Q3, upper quartile. 21 in our case. 75th percentile, that means what percent of the class has been to fewer than 21 states? And what percent of the class has been to more than 21 states? 25. I like what you guys are doing. You're generalizing. Nobody's arguing with me today. You were arguing with me last class, and I loved it, by the way, FYI. Because you said, wait a minute, it isn't exactly 75-25. If we actually counted up, yes, Andrea's like, yes, I remember this. It was something like 74-26. Good for you. Be general. On average, it will be exactly 75-25 as you average it out. There are going to be slight deviations from data set to data set, but think of it in those big generalizations. Good. And Q4, which is not usually called Q4, that's your max value. If you want to call it something else, you can call it the 100th percentile. Sometimes it's called that. What it is it's the data point below everything else is. Was that good English? That might not be good English. I'm not sure. It's bigger than everything else. There we go. American. It's bigger than everything else. Hashtag Texas. Exactly. Hashtag Texas. So, 41 states is the max. That means every other data point is less. So now, going back to what Alicia said, what you've just done with these 5 values, 5, 10, 13, 21, and 41 is, you've given us a range of percentiles. 25% of the data is between 5 and 10. 25% of the data is between 10 and 13. 25% of the data is between 13 and 21. And 25% of the data is between 21 and 41. So when I asked the question, or somebody asked the question, I have no idea who asked it now, how much data is between the quartiles? Half of it, the middle 50%. From here to here is this 25 and this 25. Beautiful. What you've done is you've taken all the data and chopped it up into the bottom quarter, the middle 2 quarters, and the upper quarter. Fair, Scott, go.
Can I ask about the max?
Of course.
I think, so there can only be one data point typically for the max.
Unless they're ties. I mean, unless there were 2 of us in the class have been to 41 states, then there would be 2. Sorry.
I mean, whenever you're looking at data, you're more likely to see just one data value.
Generally speaking, especially when you get to continuous data that's very precisely measured, you're not going to have 2 kids that are exactly the same weight. I just saw this catalog for Les Paul guitars from a very large music company. It wasn't Guitar Center, it was something like AMS or something
Guitar
like
Center?
that. And it wasn't Guitar Center. It was a company like that though. They had actually measured the exact same year Gibson Les Paul. But they had 5 or 6 different ones, and they were all off by like an ounce or 2. Exact same guitar, but when you measure it to the precision of half an ounce, the little inconsistencies in the wood are different. One of those is going to be the heaviest. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, well, I was just wondering because it's like the 0 seems like you can set the 0.
That's your baseline that Vase is talking about.
But
Yes.
you can't set the max. So
True. You can have a guesstimate to what it's going to be. Like you assume it's going to be 50% improvement or something like that. You guys are getting into 244 with that, and I love it. Just so you know, I love what you're doing. But let's hold that for a little bit longer. But I love the fact you can set a control chart, and you can say above this value, I'm going to trigger some other analysis. But let's not get into that yet. I want to.
I was just curious.
Oh, good. Be curious. Be curious, because I can go to the store and buy 5 baby chicks, and they can all be roosters. I don't expect that, right? If I buy 5 baby chicks, I expect 5 little girls if I buy pullets. But that doesn't mean you can't get 5 boys, or even 1 boy, or 2 boys, or 3 boys. So we'll come. I do want to come back to that, Scott. It's a very, very good point. I want to let it go kind of now, or at the base steps.
No. Yeah.
Now, oh, good. Now, this is great. These things right here are called the 5-number summary. The min, Q1, the median, Q3, and the max. Those guys are called the 5-number summary. And they're pretty wonderful. They are. Because now if you don't have symmetric, unskewed data,